Hello friends, welcome to a gentle healing journey. My name is Rain. Have you ever had an idea in your head or a belief that you are certain is true, or maybe a story you've been telling yourself over and over? Have you been very rigid in your thinking, like maybe not considering that there could be another way to look at things? Sometimes we do this automatically, but a lot of the time it's learned behavior that we can definitely change. Many of my followers here on this channel know me, and I just wanted to say hello and thank you for sticking with me. The direction I'm taking for this channel now is more on subjects of healing and struggles and challenges. As I work through my psychology education, I want to share some tidbits of my learning with you, all in an effort to maybe get you to think about things in a different way. So one of the subjects that came up early in my psychology diploma program was critical thinking. Critical thinking in philosophy is a method of reasoning and scrutinizing information in an objective way to arrive at a solution to a problem. There are steps involved, and I'm not going to get all academic with you. My goal is to take what I've learned, apply it to my life, and then share it in a way that's understandable and hopefully helpful. So everything that I'm learning, I'm trying to apply to my own life in an effort to help me along my own healing journey. So what does critical thinking have to do with healing, you might ask? Here's my example. And I'll be pretty transparent on this channel about my experiences. So if anything triggers you, I urge you to just stop the video. Many of you know that my late husband died by suicide in May of 2025, and I found him. The last 5 years of our 12-year marriage were very difficult. I tried several times over those last 5 years to convince him that we should try separating for a while, because honestly, nothing else seemed to be working. The fact is, I wanted to separate temporarily, and he didn't. So he often threatened suicide, and the 3 times he did, 2 of those 3 times, I gave in to the threat, and I stayed in the relationship. Because clearly, if someone you love says, if you leave me, I'm going to end my life, that's not something to be taken lightly. But the 3rd time, which was February 2025, just about a year ago as I record this video, I decided to stand my ground. I stood my ground. I was miserable, honestly. We were hardly speaking and not really spending any time together. I wanted to separate. I wanted to try living alone for a while, to try to heal myself. And my hope was that maybe he would also try to heal himself so that we could come back to each other from a place of not just love, but health, good mental health. So despite the threat again, I told him I didn't want to talk about that anymore, and that if he needed help, I would call 911 for him, but that I wanted to separate. I wanted to try living apart. He was very angry at first, and I know that this anger was based on hurt feelings, but he blurted out, "You know, Rain, if I succeed this time, it'll be 100% your fault." Now here's a disclaimer. I'm not trying to paint him as a monster. He had a very loving, affectionate, and fun side to him. That was the person I fell in love with. And that's the person I have fond memories of. But he did have another side that made life very difficult. I knew him very well, and as soon as he made that statement, I recognized that he was being impulsive and reactive, and it was due to his feelings being hurt. But it was disturbing to hear that. I tried not to take it seriously, even though it was said. And eventually, when he realized I wasn't going to change my mind, he became very passive and he apologized for what he'd said. But most of you know, 2 months after that, he died. So that's the background story that I wanted to share for critical thinking. So, of course, I was terrified and shocked when I found him on that morning in May. And that thing he said back in February of 2025 just flashed right through my mind. "You know, Rain, if I succeed this time, it'll be 100% your fault." I mean, that's all I could think of. The guilt I felt was intolerable. I was like broken from it. Even though he apologized for saying it, you can't unhear something like that, especially after he did succeed in ending his life. He left me no note, no letter, nothing but his last will and testament. So what was going through my mind was that, well, maybe he truly did believe that I was the cause of his death. Maybe he did believe that. I'm telling you, it messes up your mind. I tried therapy for a few months to try to work through that guilt, but nothing was working. The therapist was telling me about survivor's guilt. She had tunnel vision. Now, I may be wrong, but my understanding of survivor's guilt is that people are in a survival situation. Some die, and those who don't have survivor's guilt because they were all in the same situation together, and some made it and some didn't. It wasn't a situation they could control, but they still feel guilty that they lived when the others died. The biggest example that we can probably all think of is 9/11, right? So my late husband, he controlled his survival and he controlled his death. It wasn't a situation where I was in his mind with him. So I really wasn't going along with the therapist telling me that I had survivor's guilt. She started to list out a long-term therapy plan, talking about how I had post-traumatic stress disorder and that I needed cognitive behavioral therapy, perhaps medication. And I just didn't think that was the right way to go. I didn't feel it. So I decided to give that therapy a break. And after I spent some time alone, I realized I don't think I have survivor's guilt. I have grief. I witnessed something traumatic and terrifying, but my guilt was the result of this story that I'd been telling myself. And this is the story I was telling myself. Rain, the decision you made in February of 2025 caused the death of your husband. So he was right to say that it was 100% your fault. If you had made a different decision, it wouldn't have cost him his life. That's what I kept telling myself. Isn't that crazy? Now, that is truly, really what I was telling myself for months, even though logic and everyone around me, who I hold dear, by the way, told me, Rain, every adult makes their own choice. It was his choice, not yours, not your fault. So what was happening was that I had misplaced guilt. I was feeling guilty for something I was absolutely not responsible for. Why? Because of what he said impulsively that day in anger, that it would be 100% my fault. And whether he believed it or not, I should not have been believing it. So I knew it was something I could definitely work on and hopefully overcome. I've done research on misplaced guilt before, and it was ironic that I was now experiencing it, but it took me months to really realize that this is what I was experiencing. So as I was going through my psychology course notes, I stumbled on that section on critical thinking. And in an effort to apply my knowledge to my own life in order to heal, I went through the steps of critical thinking. And these are the steps. I'm going to show them to you. The first step is knowledge. You educate yourself, you gather information by listening, by reading, by watching, and observing. The second step is understanding. In this step, you ask yourself questions about the information that you've gathered. Do I agree? Why? Do I disagree? Why? Is this really important? Why? If it's not important, then why isn't it important? The third step is reflection. You've got your information, and now you're asking questions to try to understand it better. You want to take your time to think and be open-minded and ask yourself, is there something about this that I'm not seeing? You want to reflect on it without a rigid mind. You want to reflect on it with an absolutely open mind. Now, the fourth step is reevaluation. Now that you've taken the time to really try to know and understand and reflect upon this situation, ask yourself this: is there another way of looking at this based on what I now know and what I now understand? And the fifth step is application. You apply your new perspective to the situation and ask yourself, What would happen if I did something different? Then apply that something different and see what happens. So if we look at my example, the first step is knowledge, right? I actually stumbled on some things in his files, and I was desperately looking for a goodbye note. I'm just going to say that. He had kept all of his medical history in a folder, and I learned that he'd been diagnosed with several disorders. Some of them I knew, I was aware of, but some of them I wasn't. And it wasn't surprising, but it was eye-opening. There were mentions of previous suicide attempts and threats as well in that file. So I was gaining more knowledge about him by reading those things. Second step is understanding. This was all making sense to me, and after I'd spoken to some people that he knew, it made even more sense. I knew he was troubled. He told me a lot, but I didn't know to what extent. But all of the information had me questioning whether or not his death was really my fault or not. The third step, reflection, which for me kind of went hand in hand with the second step of understanding. Thinking about the whole situation, the threats, the patterns, all of that. It was a lot to think about. Step number 4. So I get to the point of reevaluating this misplaced guilt. And I asked myself, was it really my fault? And it was a clear no. What I'd learned was that he had suicide ideation since he was a teenager. He'd made some attempts in the past after failed relationships. And unfortunately, his mental health challenges were going untreated. So I could see a pattern. And finally, step 5, applying everything I've learned to bring a new awareness and to help solve my problem of misplaced guilt. And I finally said to myself, no, it was not my fault. He made the choice to end his life. He could have made many different choices, but none of those choices are mine to carry. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to repeat that again. Other people's choices are not yours to carry. And I'm telling you, friends, that misplaced guilt was gone. I don't feel it anymore, and I haven't since I went through the process of critical thinking. Now, I'm not saying this is a magical solution to all of your problems and challenges, but it really can bring new perspective, and you can use this process in many areas of your life. When people talk about critical thinking, you see it mostly as a philosophy in an educational setting or in business, but I was able to apply that to my own personal life, and it helped me to gain new perspective on a struggle I'd been going through. And just in closing, I'd like to share with you a story that my professor shared. It's called The Principle of the Harvest. Many of you might recognize this as a story from the Bible about the concept of you reap what you sow, but my professor put a different spin on it. Farmers know that they take responsibility for sowing seeds into the ground, for protecting them, watering them, and nurturing them. They also know that this is the extent of their responsibility because they can't force the seed to grow into a harvestable plant. I love that analogy. It's a good principle to apply to our lives. If I can apply that to myself, I would think of it like this. I tried to nurture and protect my husband for many years, and I wanted to see him thrive along with me, but I couldn't force him to change or decide to live or die. That was not my responsibility. I'm extremely sad for the choice he made because I still love him, of course, but also I'm someone who sees possibilities, and I'm very sad that we couldn't explore those possibilities together, to heal together and to grow closer together. But at the same time, I can't take blame for his choices. And really, I really want to underline that point. You cannot take blame for other people's choices. It's not fair to you, and it keeps you in a trap of bad feelings, self-deprecating talk. You can only be responsible for your own choices. And if you have guilt over a choice that you've made, think about why. Is it merited? Did you really do something wrong? And if you did, then guilt is appropriate because it's a signal to you that you did something wrong. And maybe you need to make amends and learn the lesson to not do that thing again. Now, if you feel guilt for a choice you made and you think about it and you truly know that you didn't do anything wrong, you may have misplaced guilt, and it's important to work through it and not keep yourself trapped in it. I kept myself trapped in it. So I hope that by sharing this with you, you might take something positive from it. You may have a problem or an unhealthy belief about yourself, and if you just sit back from it a little bit, learn all you can, think deeply about it for better understanding and new perspective, open your mind to the possibilities, reevaluate the situation with your newfound ideas, you might just find like a better solution to what you've been looking for. Thanks for watching, friends. Be well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.